All right, check this out. I got a really good video of a pilot bearing example today. So if you listen, foot's off the pedal, nice and quiet. Put just minimal foot pressure. Back up, back up, back up. Just a little bit. Work it a little like this. Notice no noise. If he was starting that, it came in less than that. No noise, less. Just like that, a little bit of pressure, but no noise. If that were a release bearing, it would be making noise as his foot goes down on the pedal. But this is a pilot bearing noise, so watch his foot go down. Okay, all the way to the floor, all the way up. All the way to the floor, and up. So look, now that you see the motion, I want to point something out. So this transmission input shaft bearing rests on the crankshaft. While your clutch pedal's up, both of the two shafts are moving together. When your clutch pedal's down, the engine continues to turn, the input shaft stops. Go ahead and put your foot down, and up, and down, and up. Okay, so that is a pilot bearing failure. So what I was explaining there, when you push your foot down on the pedal, by the way, that's disengaging the clutch for the record, your engine will continue to turn, right? And if you look in here, that's where your input shaft is going to rest. So I've got another clutch on an actual rear-wheel drive transmission. This is the end of your input shaft. That end of the input shaft is going to rest in a bearing like this. So when your pedal's down, your clutch is disengaged, this is going to continue to spin because it's bolted to the engine, and yet your input shaft has to land in here. Your input shaft is going to stop. So that's going to make this bearing work right there. Right? Now when you let your clutch pedal up, your flywheel continues to spin, but your input shaft spins along with it. So if that bearing shot, it would go away. Right? So that's what you saw. Pedal down, this spins, this stops, the bearing works. Pedal up, this spins, this also spins, the bearing doesn't do anything, so a defective bearing won't make any noise. That's the quickest way to diagnose it. The other video was on a release bearing, and I want to help illustrate that a little bit more. So this is your clutch setup right here. When you go ahead to press the clutch pedal, you're going to push, and hydraulics is going to push on this fork most likely, or maybe a cable is going to pull on it. When I start to throw it this way, right, to the right, that's going to push this release bearing right there, often called the throwout bearing, into the finger clutch, the diaphragm spring, they may say, which is going to actually disengage this clutch disc, and it's going to allow it to slip. However, if this bearing is bad, you'd really be able to hear the noise. It would change in intensity and sound, and maybe even like the pitch, just with minimal pressure. So as soon as you start to move your foot, you're going to start to move this fork. You're going to start manipulating the forces on this bearing. So that would be linked to that first video on the Honda. That is a failed release bearing. This one on the Nissan is a failed pilot bearing. Those are your main noises. There's one more, and that can be this input bearing of the transmission. This input shaft bearing would make noise when your clutch pedal's all the way out. So if your clutch is down and the noise goes away, this bearing stops because the input shaft stops. If you let your foot up, this will start to spin and then spin completely while your pedal's up. That would more be a transmission input shaft bearing. That's not part of the clutch job. So those first two are clutch jobs. This is more transmission work right here. So I hope that helps.